Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Stan, and I'm back again to talk about some more Magic the Gathering killer decks. And I'm going to be talking about one of the top 10 most dominating decks of the old school. I saved the best one for last, the Necrodeck. A Type 2/standard deck that came along, and to say that it put an impression on the game would be an understatement. The Necrodeck here comes in at the number 1 spot of the top 10 most dominating decks of the old school. Take a look at the recipe. As you can tell, the Necrodeck was all about speed. And unlike other decks that I covered on this particular top 10, the Necrodeck is like the only deck that has one color, not counting artifacts and land. Yeah, the Necrodeck was straight black. Me personally, I don't like using decks that only have one color, due to the fact that what if somebody drops a nasty ass card like this and completely fucks your day? But there was a method to the Necrodeck's madness of having just one color. Throughout the lifetime of the Necrodeck, there have been several variations, and each one is slightly tweaked and slightly different from the original one, but all of them have one particular aspect that makes them all the same. With the help of the Necro, you can pretty much outdraw your opponent and eventually bring him to his knees, usually crying and sobbing like a little girl, by putting more creatures in the play than he's able to block or get rid of. I mean, just look at your starting line, man. This is like the Magic the Gathering dream team. You got Black Knights, you got Hypnotic Specters, you got the Shade here, and you got the Vampire, which in my opinion is probably one of the best old school vampires. Now, once in play, cards like the Ivory Tower and the Zoran Orb help keep the life flow to coming in. A lot of old school decks that are in this top 10 use the old Ivory Tower and Zoran Orb as a life gain substance. And who could blame them? They're pretty good. Or at least they were for their time. And this deck also has, in the artifact department, an Icy Manipulator and the almighty reset button, Neverreal Disc. It also serves as a way for you to get rid of the Necro. In the meantime, a steady stream of Black Knights and Orders of the Ebon Hand pretty much just rip your opponent's life total into pieces. And when you run low on cards, all you have to do is just simply drop the Necro again, fill your hand back up to 7 cards, and get back into business of beating the living shit out of your opponent. Alright, speaking a little bit more about the dominance of the Necrodeck, there have been several hundred deck designs over the years in MTG's history, as you guys know. Actually, I should say there have been thousands. Most of them have become mainstream. When the Necrodeck reared its head, the Necrodeck was so popular that back in the 96 World Championships, about like 65, maybe 70% of the entire participants were like playing with Necrodecks, even if key elements have been stripped out of it. You know, thanks to those geniuses at the DCI. But you can't really blame them. I mean, honestly, this particular deck formula right here, back in its prime, was ridiculously powerful. Now, I've made it number 1 in this particular top 10 list because of how fast and how efficient it was. But that doesn't necessarily mean that it was a better deck design than the deck, the Rack Balance, the Reanimator, or even the Prose Bloom. Now, once I start doing the video segments called Arena, I'll be getting particular mainstream deck designs and putting them side by side and seeing exactly how well they measure up to each other, just so we can put all the speculation to the side. Weaknesses of the Necrodeck, I have to say, well, it's one standard color, black. And like I said earlier, if someone plays something like this, or something like this, yeah, this could fuck you sideways. A lot of people also need to realize that you shouldn't use this card unless you need to get cards. Overusing the Necro, especially with a deck like this, can prove to be problematic, to say the least, because there's a possibility that you can deck yourself. Alright, that's pretty much all I got to speak about on this deck. This was the #1 dominating deck of the old school, the Necrodeck. And send me some feedback on how successful you were. As always, I'd like to give a shout out to all my fans, all of the sources for this particular strategy, and I also like to thank you for watching. Please comment, vote, and subscribe. You know how I love to hear from you guys. Anyway, I'm Stan, and that's all for now.